Welcome to the Goodyear City Council meeting. We're excited to have you be a part of this important public process. Tonight, you will have the opportunity to address City Council on both non-agenda and agenda items. The agendas and speaker request cards are located in the back of the council chambers. You must fill out a speaker request card in order to address the City Council. Please drop your completed card in the tray next to the blank speaker cards. If the meeting has already begun, please hand it to the officer. You may check the "I do not wish to speak" option on the card. This allows you to still voice your opinion on an item on the record without having to speak. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, please contact a staff member if you need any assistance. Public comment on a non-agenda item will take place during the citizen comment portion of the evening. These are items that don't appear on tonight's formal agenda. The city clerk will call your name when it's time for you to speak. At that time, please approach the podium and tell us your name for the record. You'll have a maximum of 3 minutes. The timer is on the screens visible from the podium. Note that you may also choose not to speak if other speakers before you have said what you wanted to say. Shouting, cheering, and loud noises will not be tolerated, and violators may be removed for disrupting the meeting. Goodyear City Council meetings stream live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and online at goodyearaz.gov. Follow the city's social media pages so you don't miss out on all that's happening in Goodyear. Thank you for coming to this meeting and being an active part of your city. And remember, it's a great time to be in Goodyear.
I'd like to call a regular meeting to order, June 12, 2023. Everybody here is present, right, City Clerk? With that, please join Councilmember Stipp in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gracious God, we pray that you will keep watch over us in these uncertain times. We ask that you grant your humble servants holy inspiration, that we may set our minds on the things that are right. We ask that you govern our hearts and minds, that we may remain faithful to you, and as you have taught us, to love and care for one another. Tonight we ask for your merciful guidance as we conduct the business of our city, to make Goodyear a great place to live, play, work, and visit. We praise and thank you, Lord, for the many blessings that we have as a city and as individuals. We could not have done this alone. We ask that you lead us now in lives of service and obedience to fulfill your will. Please be with the men and women serving our city, our state, and our nation, both here and abroad. Guide and protect them as they protect us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Now it's time for citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda items within the jurisdiction of the City of Goodyear. Got a speaker card?
I do, Mayor.
Come on up.
Joy Peterson.
Don't be shy. Step on up and right in the microphone there.
Hi, my name is Joy Madrie Peterson.
Where you reside? Are you a Goodyear resident? Okay, well, go ahead. No, you don't have to be nervous. The only one bites up here is Lori, so don't worry about it. Come on. Yes? Mama, you want to come up and help her?
Yeah. So we know what she wants to say.
You know what to say.
Don't be shy. It's okay.
Well, I live on East La Paz, 210 East La Paz Drive, and when I leave near my Sunday school, there are big really big gray buildings. I don't know what to call them though. They're just buildings, big buildings. Warehouses. And I don't like how you built the warehouses without considering what the citizens think. Because before the buildings were there, sometimes my family would go outside and see the view sunset, but now we can't see the sunset anymore. That's it.
Well, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Yeah, I guess, where's the attorney? I guess, for clarification, can I mention that ACUS lines off of 303 and some of that, is that out of norm? Is the only thing that can be built? Or, I think one of the questions was the warehouses. She had a concern about the warehouses because she couldn't see the sunset from her house because the warehouse were blocking it. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that because of the Luke Air Force Base ACUS lines, there's only certain things that can be built there. And residential can't be built there because of the contour lines, et cetera. So, personally, I like to call them employment centers because it employs a lot of people here at the city. But is that not out of line for what we can? I think you said it well. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So with that, any other speaker cards?
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for coming up. You never have to be shy about coming up, okay? Will the city clerk please read the consent agenda items 1 through 8 by title only?
Number 1, approve the minutes. Number 2, recommend approval for a new Class B bingo license at the Avondale Moose Lodge. Number 3, approve a new Series 12 restaurant liquor license for Waffletto Coffee and Waffles located at 405 North Litchfield Road, Suite 208. Number 4, adopt resolution number 2023-2313, approving an intergovernmental agreement with Maricopa County for Indian School Road and Perryville Road intersection improvements, providing authorization, direction, and an effective date. Number 5, authorize the acceptance and execution of a dedication of right-of-way for the Bullard Avenue widening at southbound Van Buren project. Number 6, approve amendment number 12 to the intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with the Regional Public Transit Authority for the continued provision of accessible transit services. Number 7, approve expenditure up to $1 million for the midterm update of the Integrated Water Master Plan, Project 60079. Number 8, adopt resolution number 2023-2324, amending policy 600, attendance and leave as an amendment to the City of Goodyear Policy and Administrative Guidelines Manual.
Thank you. Any on the council wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Anybody?
Mayor, just a
Go ahead.
Just a comment. Just a comment on item number 6. I just want to acknowledge that we've got Valley Metro staff in the audience. You want to raise your hand. Thank you for being here tonight as we try to improve transit in the valley. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Let's see, can we get a motion and a second? We have a motion and a second on the board. Can we go ahead and open the voting? Passes 7-0. We now have a public hearing to consider 2 items. We'll hear about the resolution to adopt our budget and increase in the property tax levy. Open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Biddle, and I'm the Finance Manager of Budget and Research here at the City of Goodyear. And this evening's public hearing is to cover both the fiscal year 24 final budget as well as truth and taxation. Just a really quick recap of how we got to where we are today. Back in November, the budget process officially started with collaboration between departments, the City Manager's Office, and budget staff. That collaboration culminated in a general fund forecast that was presented to Council in February at a Council retreat, and that was used as the basis to create our fiscal year 2024 forecast. Collaboration continued through April, where the City Manager's recommended budget was presented, and we discussed with Council in an extended work session revenues, expenditures for the city, supplementals, and CIP projects, amongst other things. And then a tentative budget was adopted a few weeks ago. In the tentative budget, we outlined line by line any changes from the City Manager's recommended budget to the tentative budget, which brings us to where we are tonight for final budget adoption. The process that we will follow is very similar to what we just did with the CFDs, but I'll touch on this slide at the very end because I have a copy of that at the end of the slide. These slides should look very familiar to council. They're the exact same slide deck that we used from our tentative budget presentation, just pared down a little bit. It's important to note that nothing has changed from the tentative budget adoption. So if I'm going rather quickly through this for those who haven't followed us through the budget process, it's not because what we're covering is not important, but it's because council has now seen these slides or a variation of these slides about a half dozen times now through this point in the budget process. So if we start with where the money comes from, $876.6 million. It's created mostly of fund balance and operating revenue. Fund balance is great to have. Unfortunately, we can't just spend that on anything. A lot of that is, for example, future CIP projects for future years, or it could be in a restricted fund. Operating revenue makes up the majority of the rest of it. A little bit of debt and other is our CFD and trust funds. If we dive into the operating revenue, sales tax, as it is every year, is where the majority of our revenue comes from, making up just over 26% of our fiscal year 2024 budget. Enterprise fund user fees, those are paid by Goodyear residents, water, wastewater, and sanitation, and it goes right back into funding those services for the city. Bond proceeds for this year are for our brine disposal project, as well as dollars if we were to have a successful GO bond election come November. And the rest of the budget includes other items of note, such as property taxes, which we'll cover in just a second, in truth and taxation, as well as proceeds from development agreements, impact fees, and a variety of other fees and licenses for the city. Looking at where does the money go, $806.9 million. This is a very capital-intensive budget, just as it was last year. The takeaway from this slide is you're looking at very similar percentages in how we're spending our money, just bigger dollars. So last year, for example, supplies made up 20% of our spend. It makes up 19% this year. Last year, personnel made up 18%, this year 16%. Capital last year was in the 40% range. We're at 45% again this year. The exact same thing looking at by department, where the money is being spent, and this is all expenditures, one-time, ongoing, supplemental, CIP, everything. Typically, the dollars follow where the CIP projects are. So you'll see water services, engineering, public safety make up kind of the bigger percentages. General government is kind of a catch-all, and that includes finance, HR, IT, city manager, amongst other departments. If we look at FTEs, we will be approving about 43 new FTEs this year. Compare that to last year, where we approved 67 FTEs. And if you look on the right, after those are added in, public safety will make up about 43% of our total FTEs in the city, which demonstrates our continued effort and commitment towards funding public safety here. Looking at capital improvement projects, our 5-year CIP plan is coming in at $689.9 million. Focusing right on 2024, the big gray line in the middle there, engineering streets, that's a lot of continuation projects from our streets initiatives that we started last year. In fiscal year 2025, that big gray box has to do with the Australia Bridge project. And in fiscal year 2027, that is primarily due to the blue box there, relates to our Goodyear Water Reclamation Facility 3 MGD expansion. Now getting into truth and taxation. So I know council gets asked a lot of questions of residents of how property taxes are used or where property taxes go. I think this is a wonderful diagram that shows the majority of property taxes that a resident pays actually goes towards education. Goodyear collects and is able to use a very small percentage of property taxes. So said differently, for every $1 that a resident pays in property taxes, only 14 cents of that goes to the city of Goodyear. Our fiscal year 2024 budget includes about $25.1 million of forecasted property tax collections. And in a future In Focus magazine that is upcoming, I have it on good authority. This diagram will show up in there as well. So it's important to note that truth and taxation deals only with the primary portion of property taxes, which is the piece that's included in the general fund portion of our city's budget. Truth and taxation is triggered per state statute when our primary property tax levy increases from one year to the next. excluding the impact of new construction. The truth in taxation amount for this year is $258,247. So our combined property tax rate for fiscal year '24 is $1.74 per $100 of assessed valuation. That is the same that it was in fiscal year 2023, and is actually the same combined property tax rate that it's been since 2018 in the city of Goodyear. So another way to say that is any change to a Goodyear resident's property tax bill in fiscal year 2024, which as just discussed is a very small portion of their total tax bill, is likely due to the value of their property being worth more this year than it was last year. You can see at the very bottom here in the box, the average assessed value for a single-family home in Goodyear is just over $219,000. So the average Goodyear resident will pay about $380 to the city of Goodyear. So this slide is here simply to show that the city has completed all outreach, notifications, and statutory requirements for both truth in taxation and the adoption of the final budget. And in closing, what's being asked of City Council today, following this public hearing, is to take public comment on truth in taxation and the final budget adoption, close the public hearing, and approve our truth in taxation amount of $258,247 by roll call vote. Once our regular council meeting concludes, we'll immediately reconvene in a special meeting as required by state law to adopt the fiscal year 2024 budget. Looking ahead, we'll formally adopt our tax levies at our June 26th council meeting. Are there any questions?
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Anybody in the audience like to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Let's see, open for council discussion. The only thing, go ahead, Councilmember Stipp.
Ryan, you may not know the answer to this question, and I don't know that I need to know it immediately, but at some point, can somebody explain, if they can even begin to imagine, what the rationale is behind us having to have a special meeting after a special meeting to do these budget processes? Everyone's talking about making government more efficient, and this process has done nothing but bog it down. I know it's not our doing, it's not the way that we want it, it's statutory requirement, I get that. But at some point, I would, if someone has that, I don't think we need to take time tonight, but I would love to hear the explanation for it on why, if someone can even figure it out, because it may just be somebody's brilliant idea sitting down in downtown Phoenix. So thank you.
With that, could you go back to slide 8 real quick? Yeah. The only thing I want to highlight, let's see, is it slide 8? Let's see, no, go back one more. Maybe it is 8. The point I was trying to make, go back down to 8, is that you got public sector is 43% of the personnel. But there's a lot of that in public works, a lot of it's driven for our water, on our sewer fees and all that. If you take that out, I'm guessing pretty much half of all our personnel for general fund purposes is public safety. Is that a fair estimate?
Yes, so we don't actually have a slide on here that shows just the general fund, but if you were to look at just the general fund expenditures, over half of our discretionary fund, which is the general fund, goes towards funding public safety, correct?
Okay. And the only reason why I mention that is I know I've had my challenges with some of the former people running at the state and some of our legislators. But the reason why I mention that is, unfortunately, it's always easy to spend other people's money, and our legislators down there love to be able to take some of our general fund away from us. And the point that I want to make is when they do that, it can't help but impact public safety, only if half of it's going to it. I mean, it's a simple math issue. So I just want to highlight that to the public. When you see anything going on there in the state legislatures that's trying to impede the local government's ability on its revenue source, please put in a no for us. I would really appreciate that. So with that, let's see, no other discussion? With that, can you go ahead and take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Keno?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell? Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Hampton?
Aye.
Councilmember Gillis?
Aye.
Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. I'd like to remind council, wait for a motion or second for discussing. We have our one item on business is consider approving the Adelphant Agreement improvement on Bullard Avenue. Go ahead and please introduce yourself to the public.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve Cinto, City Engineer. Tonight, I'm seeking approval of a development agreement with Squaw Peak Goodyear. It's in support of our city's Bullard Ave improvement project just south of Van Buren. If you look at the exhibit, Squaw Peak owns this property, and this is the approximate location of our CIP project. So some quick background on the agreement. Staff was prepared to move forward with the cost recovery process, but since there's only one adjacent property owner, we also reached out to pursue this development agreement in lieu of the more complicated cost recovery process. Squaw Peak was very receptive to this approach and collaborated with staff to agree to enter into a reimbursement agreement, pretty straightforward agreement. The reimbursement mechanism in the agreement is very similar to a cost recovery mechanism. How it works is prior to the owner pulling their first development permit, they will reimburse the city their share of the actual cost of construction for the project up to a maximum probable cost. Their share does not include the half of the median and some temporary drainage improvement. That's the difference between our project cost and what they reimburse us for. So in addition to the reimbursement, the agreement also clarifies the necessary right-of-way that the owner needs to convey to the city, although that's already happened, previous action tonight that you all voted on. So in closing, this agreement allows the city to move forward with the Bullard Ave improvements with a mechanism for reimbursement while also limiting the risk to the owner by establishing a maximum reimbursement amount. A big thank you to the City Attorney's Office for their collaboration on this agreement. Staff supports the agreement and recommends its approval. And now I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Anybody in the audience like to speak? All right. City Clerk, please read resolution ordinance number 2023-2320 by title only.
Adopt resolution number 2023-2320, approving the development agreement for Bullard Avenue improvements with Squaw Peak Goodyear LLC and Arizona Limited Liability Company, authorizing and directing the city manager to execute said development agreement, providing authorization for future actions, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Can I get a motion and a second for 2023-2320? See, I see a motion and a second, open for public discussion. I've got, Wally, you're up.
Yes, Steve, is this so that we can widen that intersection area and then be reimbursed whenever the developer pulls his permits?
Mayor, council member, absolutely. That's the main purpose of the agreement is we build the infrastructure and then prior to their development, so at some point in the future, assuming they develop, then they will reimburse us for the actual cost of the construction up to a capped amount.
And we're widening the road right there at that area. Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else? We've got the discussion. Go ahead and open the voting. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Does the city council have any comments, commendations, or reports on current events or requests for future items? We all good? City manager have anything to report?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's see, next meeting will be June 26th at 5 p.m. Don't go anywhere because we still got something else here. Further business discussion. This meeting here is adjourned.